I was so taken up with love. And the next person that you're going to love up here with me is Brian Atkins, my brother Brian.
And talking about love, you know, the love between a parent and a child is a very special thing. And so often the parent wants to just protect the child, to nurture him, to make sure they're okay. But often the way they truly show that they love the child is preparing it for the world, teaching it how to protect itself. Now, the baby giraffe, prior to its birth, is encased in this ergonomically designed, climate-controlled, fuel-injected cell. And suddenly, it drops 6 feet to the ground. And as it's struggling around there, trying to regain its consciousness, its mother comes over and starts kicking him to get up. And he's like, okay, hang on a second. He finally stumbles up, and as soon as she gets up, he kicks him again, and she's back down on the ground. And she keeps doing this until the baby is able to finally spring to its feet at the spur of a moment. And only then does she take the time to nurture and feed him. And the reason she does this is so simple. She loves him so much, and she knows that the only way he will survive is for him to learn to spring to his feet in the spur of a moment. And that's what you do with the child that you dearly love, is you teach them how to protect themselves. Now, I've often heard that in this world, a lot of people seem to feel there's not enough love in the world. And fortunately for us, Ernest Holmes had an answer to that. He said, change your thinking, change your life. So if you're not seeing a lot of love out in the world, it's because you're not focusing on the right thing. And what I'd like to encourage you to do is store in your data bank, in your mind, the experiences in your life where you have experienced love. And whenever somebody cuts you off in traffic or something like that, and you feel like saying words that I can't say up here to them, you want to take the time to reflect back on those loving experiences that you had. And as you do that, you will discover that love grows in your life. And I'd like to share one of these experiences that I had when I was a young kid at the age of 8. And I remember we were out playing, I was playing with my neighbors in their yard, and suddenly they decided that they wanted to go ahead and start throwing this super ball up against the wall of the house. Now, let me describe this situation. On the ground floor, it was a 2-story house. On the ground floor, there was a garage with a glass window. And above that was a wall that we could throw this super ball against. And so we started throwing it against it. It was having a good time. And then they said, okay, well, let's back up a little bit. And I backed up a little bit further, and we were doing it. And we kept backing up at their desire until finally my ball was landing right above the glass window. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm about ready to learn the rule about something about the law of gravity here. And I finally said, you know what? I can't do this. I've got to stop. And they said, okay, Brian, you can do this. Come on. And I was like, no. And they finally said, well, if you really think you're not strong enough to do it, Brian. And suddenly it was like, okay, game on. Give me the ball. And I took that ball, and I threw it as hard as I could. And you ever have one of those experiences where suddenly everything seems to kind of go into slow motion, and I'm watching this ball as it's hovering along its way, and it kind of like just smiles back at me and says, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. And suddenly you hear this crash. And I was horrified. I had broken the window. And I ran home as fast as I could. I ran in the backyard, and my father was there. And I started telling what happened, and we walked into the house. And next thing you know, of course, my quote-unquote friends who had gotten me into this were there at the door saying, our parents would like to have a word with Brian. And I'm like hiding behind my father's legs. And my father reaches down with his big arms and picks me up in his arms. And of course, I knew that I had cost him money. I know I had made a mistake, and he knew that. He knew this was going to cost him money, but in his own mind, he realized that what really was important here was for him to understand or to me to understand that I was always going to be safe in his arms. And when I reflect back on the love of God, That's kind of what that reminds me of, is that unconditional love of my Father. And what I do with this now is I take it and I go ahead and when I find situations like somebody cuts me off in traffic, I pull that out of my storehouse because initially I get pissed off. But once I begin to reflect back on that love, my mind begins to change and I feel a much deeper sense of love. And I look at the world in a much more loving manner. And as the law of attraction says, that as we experience more and more love in our life and become more loving, we attract love to us. So this is something I would encourage you to give a shot. Go ahead and try this. I realize some people maybe had a different experience growing up than I did. Perhaps their parents didn't express that kind of love. And if that's the case, then look around you because love is everywhere in this world. And use those experiences to help bring more love into your life. And now I would like to welcome Zena Kacha up to the mic.